If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, I am here with author Krempholtz for her new novel, Violet Thistlewaight is Not a Villain Anymore, which is out everywhere today. Hi,
Woo-hoo!
Emily. How are you?
I'm so great, Crystal. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you on. You and I have been talking on TikTok for, a year? I feel like it's been a year about doing this. Since before your novel even had a release date, we connected on your Writers of Rohan TikTok, where you give all sorts of writing advice. And that's how I initially found you. So just really excited to have you here and to get to finally celebrate the release of your novel.
Woohoo! It's happening.
So how about we just dive right in and you tell our listeners all about Violet Thistlewaight is Not a Villain Anymore.
Yeah. So Violet Thistlewaight is Not a Villain Anymore is a cozy fantasy romance about a powerful plant witch, Violet Thistlewaight, who has spent her entire life working for an evil sorcerer as kind of his right-hand minion. And after he's defeated, she decides, you know what? I would like to turn over a new leaf. I don't want to be evil anymore. I really want to try my hand at being a better person. And so she moves to a small town and opens a flower shop, much to the chagrin of the grumpy alchemist who lives next door. He is not super pleased to be sharing his space, including the greenhouse in the back that they are forced to share as part of their workspace. But a lot of the book is about Violet kind of figuring out what it is to be a good person and butting heads with this guy next door. And eventually when a kind of mysterious blight pops up in her new community and her own past kind of comes knocking at her door, she's forced to grapple with the question of whether someone like her, a former villain like her, ever really deserves her own happily ever after.
So this is a fantastic second chance novel where we really get into the villain's mindset as she works to redeem herself and works through those feelings, her self-talk and the way she feels about herself, as well as how she sees herself in the world around her, which I think is just honestly a lot of fun, especially in such a kind of a cozy romantasy.
It was a lot of fun to play with it. When you're writing about villains, especially in like the book talk space, everybody loves like their like morally gray heroes and like, the shadow daddies. It was kind of fun approaching the villain archetype from that cozy standpoint instead of that really, really dark standpoint. I felt like it was just a blast to play with in all sorts of ways.
Absolutely. Tell us about some of your inspirations for this novel.
So originally, this book was inspired by, I walked into the living room and my partner was playing a video game. And he was like defeating I think he was playing Elden Ring, and he was defeating like some big bad evil guy who had all these minions. And we started riffing. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know. What did those people do to you? That guy could be saving up to put his kid through college. And that guy's just working for the villain because she's, saving up for her dream to go open a flower shop. And it stuck, kind of the question of what makes people do the things they do. And what would they do if they weren't bound by, this bond to a greater supervillain? I started thinking a lot about, what would somebody do outside of that life? And then in connection to that, we all have that kind of like daydream where you're like, oh, what if I left everything behind and I went and I like opened like a little bookshop in a small town, and there was like a little cafe bakery and just like all these cute little rolling ladders, and like that was my life instead of like, everything that I'm living right now. So those two kind of jokey fantasies kind of combined to become Violet. And it was really fun, shortly after that whole bit with the video game, I like woke up one morning and I told my partner, I was like, hey, I was like, we need to go on a walk and you can't talk. I just need to talk at you for a while. And we walked for like hours and I just like word vomited out this entire story. And things had changed obviously from start to finish. It wasn't exactly the story that you see on the page now, but the heart of the story was there. And it really was this tale of really wanting to change, and this story of somebody who wanted to be better than what she was and who came from this strange, pretty evil life and wanted to do better and wanted to live something completely different. And it was a lot of fun, just the way it came to me and then the way that I wrote it too.
So Violet is a character who was basically raised to be a villain. She doesn't know much outside of that life at the start of this novel. So how did you approach her kind of learning to be a decent human being and challenge the way she was raised?
It's definitely a process for Violet, as you'll find throughout the book, something that she struggles with. It's not something that comes easy to her. You don't get to just like walk into a room one day and be like, I am a different person now. I have this new identity and all of my values are different and everything I have taught in the system under which I have been raised no longer applies to me. It's a lot more complicated than that. I drew on some of my own experiences, kind of deconstructing from a lot of organized religion growing up. I drew on kind of just a lot of like the hard choices that we make as adults. I felt like, Violet is a woman in her late 20s, she's a full-grown adult, but she's also a person who's learning to stand on her own for the first time. And that's something that I think is deeply relatable and can be applied to something like this. That process of her kind of learning to be good is something that, is a push and a pull, and it requires a lot of trial and error. And we see a lot of her trial and error, and we see a lot of the ways that she thinks it'll be easier than it is, and that, she kind of backslides, or that she kind of thinks back on a lot of the ways that her life was before. But yeah, I don't make it easy on her.
Yeah, Violet really goes through this sort of like self-deprogramming in order to come out on the other side of things. And then I really have to say, so her little floral shop is called Rough Around the Hedges, and one solid pun. And I'm always here for a good pun.
Then you're in the right place.
I think it's also a really good kind of explanation of Violet herself, because she is a bit rough around the edges as she's trying to, just be a good human being.
Absolutely. I wanted the name to reflect that. What is kind of fun in the book too is Violet thinks that she's almost like making a dig at Nathaniel when she names the place, but it is very much a reflection of who she is. And I will say I had other puns lined up as potential shop names. I think one of them was Grow Your Own Way. God, I can't even remember the other ones, but I had like a list of like 5 or 6 of them, and Rough Around the Hedges was the one that kind of stuck with me. I wanted it, I wanted that cozy feel, that sense of joy and optimism from all of this, but I didn't want to shy away from the fact that like this is a complicated person doing a really complicated, difficult thing with her life. So as jokey and fun as the puns are, I did want, the name to speak to that.
So this novel is a kind of a cozy romantasy, but it also really is very kind of introspective and deals with some pretty heavy topics in regards to Violet's past and what the things that she is overcoming. How did you balance those two aspects to keep things cozy while still tackling these kind of heavy and deep subjects?
To be honest, it was something that I was a little concerned about when I finished the first draft of the book. Some of the deeper stuff, particularly with Violet's relationship with her adoptive father, some of Nathaniel's past trauma, a lot of those things were not as prevalent in the initial outline of the book as they were in the final product. And as I wrote the book, I kept kind of diving deeper into both of their psyches and both of their pasts and their traumas. And when I finished the first draft, I remember handing it to my critique partner and being like, do you think this still reads cozy? Like, is this still a cozy fantasy? And it was an interesting balance to find. But I feel very strongly that cozy fantasy, first of all, is a genre that I think is still finding its own definition. I think that titles that we could now consider cozy have existed for a really long time in the fantasy space. Calling them cozy fantasy and like writing books under that umbrella is something that's still like fairly new for the publishing landscape. And so one of the things that I am finding about myself as a writer and myself as a reader is that I do believe that there is space for darker themes in cozy fantasy. I kind of reject the sense that it needs to be low stakes, that it needs to be surface level, because I feel like those deeper themes are something that is true to life. And if we're looking at cozy as kind of like a slice of life story, it makes sense that that slice would also include some of this darker stuff. I think I equate cozy more to like a contemporary romance, where a lot of contemporary romance novels, like those characters go through some hard stuff. Like they deal with a lot of really deep emotional trauma, and their character arcs are really complicated and layered. But because you're going into it knowing that it's a romance, you know that you're going to come out of it with a happy ending. You know that no matter what that author does to those characters, that they're going to come out of it with a happily ever after. And I kind of equate cozy as something similar, where the way that I want to write it and the way that I want to read it are characters that don't shy away from the hard stuff. But the reader has that knowledge that the author is holding their hand the whole time and that they're saying, it's okay, it's okay, it's going to be okay. And that it's kind of a safe space to explore some of those things. So yeah, I tried to be intentional about the way that I approached some of the darker themes while still keeping that cozy balance and making sure that my reader felt supported and hopefully feels like you can get out of it knowing that there's going to be a happy ending at the end of all of this.
So before we started recording, you were telling me about how you were invited to Comic-Con recently.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to go in and tell this story.
So, I mean, just in general, like I was so pumped to be invited. I got to go to New York. I've been to cons before and I have never been to Comic-Con, and quickly realized I was like, wow, this is like a whole different animal. This is like, I felt like I was walking into an amusement park. Like the booths were all giant and huge and complex, and all of like the big five publishers were there, and everybody's handing out free books, which was great. Loved that. And the panel I was on a panel about where fantasy meets romance, which was really cool. We had some really good discussions. There was a nice mix of like novelists and graphic novelists there. So we had kind of a cool mix of people coming at it from, you know, both the written word story element and the visual story element. And it was a fantastic experience. It was huge. And overwhelming in kind of that like overstimulating way where you're like, I'm having fun, but I'm going to sleep so hard tonight because I don't think my brain can take this on a long-term basis.
I love that so much. New York Comic Con is on my wish list for sure. I would love to be able to go sometime in the future, maybe next year.
It was really cool. I'd love to go back. Yeah. So maybe I'll see you there.
Yes, maybe. That would be incredible. But I'm like, as soon as you mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, we totally have to talk about that on the podcast.
It was so much fun. I'm on a big K-pop Demon Hunters kick at the moment. My niece is also really into it. So like I was like on the lookout for like swag for her all weekend. And I did my first ever signing line, which broke my brain. People coming up and like knowing who I was something that I was not prepared for at the time too. The book wasn't even out, and so I was signing book plates. So I got someone who was cosplaying as Rumi came up and asked for my autograph, and so I took a picture and sent that to my niece because we're big into that movie right now.
We are as well. We just had trick-or-treating a couple days ago at the time of recording, and there were 4 different Rumis, including one of my nieces. And my youngest daughter was actually Demon Genu for Halloween.
I love that.
Yes, she was the Your Idol version with the purple makeup and the scars and the hat. And yeah, doing all of her
That's so much fun.
He had a fantastic time.
I love that. Oh my God. I kept joking. I was like, I wish my hair was like a little bit longer because I have purple hair right now. And it was like, man, this is like kind of perfect for this. But I tried like doing the braid in like the hotel mirror the morning of one of the Comic-Con days. And I was like, I can't pull this off.
Yeah, it's a challenging braid. I mean, the braid itself is simple. It's just trying to get that volume and fullness.
Yes.
Because, cartoon hair is not human hair.
No, 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 no. And plus, no matter how long I grow out my hair, I'm not going to get that like ankle length braids.
Yes.
Maybe next time.
When the movie first came out, my daughter wanted roomy hair as every other, young girl. So I did get like that purple fake hair stuff and braided that into it, and that made it pretty thick and fluffy.
See, I always have the best of intentions when it comes to stuff like cosplay, but I forget to think ahead until like the week of the event, and then I think, oh man, well, I should have gotten this. I should have gotten fake hair extensions.
Yeah, that whole
Comic-Con was still a blast without it.
Yes, absolutely. And as your first Comic-Con, it sounds like it was an extremely successful event.
It was so great. I got to meet so many other authors. I got to meet so many amazing readers. I met a couple people who recognized me from Instagram and TikTok, which was great because I'm also like I'm not like a huge creator, so like I know a lot of the people that interact with me. And there was somebody in particular who like came up to me and was like, "Are you Emily?" And then like she got shy and her friend told me her username on Instagram. And I was like, I know you. And she was like, you do? I'm like, yes, of course. Like we talk. Like it's that's the cool thing about social media. Like it's a two-way street. It's fun. So that was a really cool experience getting to like meet some people face to face and outside of the, just the screen on my phone.
Oh, speaking of social media, TikTok is how you and I initially met on your Writers of Rohan page. You popped up on my feed one day when I needed some writing advice, and then one of your videos just popped up there because the algorithm is inside our brains and knows exactly what we need. And that was over a year ago now. So let's talk about your TikTok where you share so much insight into the publishing industry, as well as tons of different writing. Let me try that again. As well as tons of different writing tips and tricks and advice.
Yeah, I honestly, I love TikTok. I feel like it's one of my favorite social media platforms just because like it's the one where I kind of get to be myself in a way that is different. I don't know that we had like I feel like when social media first came around, it was all, like mirror selfies with duck face on MySpace, and then Facebook where we're posting like 60 photographs from like one night out in college and whatever, and I'm definitely dating myself here, but like I feel like as time went on it got so much more curated and so much more polished, and Instagram was like, okay, now we need like these beautiful pictures of the books that we're reading, and you need these backdrops, and you need all of these gorgeous things, and you want everything to look like very aesthetic. And then TikTok came around and it was like everybody being like, no, I am posting this in my sweatpants. I am not putting makeup on. I'm going to be real. And like, obviously there's different corners of all of this, but the thing that originally scared me about TikTok and that now I really love about it is that ability to be really authentic. Some of the videos that I've done that have done best are ones where like I record them in like 5 seconds because like I just get like that like stroke of like, maybe people want to hear about this, and I like record something and I'm like, my pajamas like standing in my kitchen, and then it resonates with people. And that's really cool. I really like that we're able to have that side of social media there. TikTok for me has very much been like a way to just kind of connect with a lot of other authors and a lot of other writers and people in the book community, which is so cool because like we're all out there and everybody's always like, this is such a solitary sport and we're all doing this by ourselves. But like, we're not in a vacuum. There are so many other people out there who have opinions and have stories to tell and want to talk about it and want to learn. And as somebody who for the past 10 years or so, I've been building my career as a writing coach and as an editor and as a ghostwriter, it's been a really great space for me to connect with people. For a while, I've found some amazing like clients on there. I've found some amazing friends on there. And I've found it to be just a really great space where if you have knowledge to share, you can share it. Because that's the other really cool thing about writing is there's no one right way to do things. So when everybody's out there sharing, hey, here's what works for me, or hey, here's a piece of advice that I have, the people who need that advice and the people who that advice resonates with are going to find it and they're going to stick with that. And the people who it doesn't resonate with are going to move on and find somebody else who's giving something that does speak to them and does help them with their writing. So yeah, I don't know. I love that community. It's a great, very unique space in this world of social media right now.
Really is. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for like Book Talk or Bookstagram, I never would have started this podcast. It was just kind of a journey from there to here. I'm not so active on TikTok so much anymore, especially, you know, with the sale news and everything.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like it's changed and I haven't been able to get my algorithm back to how I liked it. So I've kind of stepped back a bit and just focused more.
It's definitely different.
It really
like I feel
is.
like last year, you know, like after like the ban that wasn't everybody, you know, the joke was it came back wrong. And I do feel like it is very, very different. I certainly interact with that space very differently than I did. And I find myself like very much like craving the way that the algorithm was. Because like you said, you know, it's like, this is in my brain. This knows exactly what I need at this time. I do feel like some of that has changed. I don't know. It's rough, man. I just want the good old days. I don't know that I've found like another platform though that like works in the same way for that kind of writing community. I do feel like Instagram is a great space for finding other books to read and like, you know, sharing all sorts of cool news and things like that. But as far as like that teaching element, that's something that I felt like TikTok was my sweet spot there. You know, being able to like to share writing advice and to connect with other writers on that level is something that I haven't been able to quite replicate in other spaces. And I don't know, that's something maybe to think about and to try and strive toward, because I'm sure it can be created and I just haven't like quite unlocked it yet.
Yeah, so from my perspective, Instagram seems to be like a great place to get book recommendations.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's obviously, you know, people market on there, whether it's for their books or, you know, I market the podcast on there. For more of a community in a conversational aspect, I kind of think Threads is kind of stepping up. The book threads community is kind of taking that more because it didn't, you know, when Book Talk started, people started leaving Book Talk. We kind of thought people were going to head over to Bookstagram, but they didn't. I mean, there was, you know, there was more people, but they didn't bring that same kind of energy over to Instagram. They did,
it's
however,
so impossible
bring it
to predict.
Yeah. Like I never thought that Threads was going to become the community that it is now.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, like I was on Twitter since like, you know, like 2009. And like, it's funny to see Threads kind of like pick up the slack from, you know, Twitter, RIP. It's funny to see Threads kind of picking up the slack, even to the extent where an author that I love, you know, posted the other day. It's funny seeing like people discover the same drama that we had on Twitter like 10 years ago. And like kind of the way that works in cycles is so interesting to me. And I think that like the text only capacity of Threads and images and stuff too, but like it's not as video driven, obviously, as TikTok.
Yeah.
I think that opens up worlds for people in a lot of interesting ways because I think more people are willing to participate if they don't have to show their face, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. But for me, I miss like the mask off aspect of TikTok. In the good old days. I like being able to talk face to face with people, even if, you know, it's a video that thousands of other people have also watched. I feel like they're right there with me in a different way.
Yeah, it does kind of feel different.
And also for like the long form aspect too. Like, you know, you've seen my TikTok, and for anyone who hasn't, like I do a lot of like, here are 4 things that you can learn about such and such, or, you know, 4 writing tips for this and blah, 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 or 1 thing that you can implement into your work about characterization, whatever. Those tend to be a little bit longer form. And so, yeah, that's something again that, you know, there are ways to do it. I just haven't quite cracked the code for what my style of that looks like on other apps.
Yeah, I think stuff like that kind of works on Substack, But the downside to Substack is it doesn't have that algorithm for people to find you. So you basically have to use something like TikTok to bring people over to Substack in order to access your longer form content.
What a tangled web we are weaving over here.
Yeah, we are just social media app hopping at this point.
Yeah.
So next, I want to talk about your publishing journey. I've seen a lot of this just from, connecting with you on TikTok. So I've seen a bit of it myself, and I think that it's a really interesting journey, and it's something that I love to have authors share on the podcast.
We can start way back at the very beginning. I was a young, 4 or 5-year-old child who decided that I learned the word author, and that was what I wanted to be. And it kind of snowballed from there for 30 years. But so this is very much something, writing books is something I've always wanted to do. Working with stories is something I've always wanted to do. And I've spent many, many years of my life, scribbling in notebooks and writing half finished stories and writing way too much fanfic and building those abilities in myself and working on my craft. But ultimately, Violet is my debut. It's the first book I'm publishing under my name. I've ghostwritten a lot of books as well, but this one is mine. The way that I got here was so interesting because I had been in the query trenches for 4 years, and I had queried 4 other manuscripts, or Violet was my 4th. And by the time I was at that point where I started writing Violet, I was on TikTok. I was friends with so many incredible indie authors who, both on and off the app, I was chatting with them and learning about all the amazing things they were doing and all of these really great people they were reaching and all of these self-made successes that they were having. And that was so cool to me because as someone who was already in that space and somebody who was already on the app and somebody who was marketing my own business as a freelancer, I was like, I can do this. I have these skills, and this is a path for me to have a book with my name on it in my hands. And I want that. Continue pursuing traditional publishing afterward. I had all these plans. And so the idea for Violet came into my head, and I was like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write this one. I'm going to fast draft this one, and I'm going to write it for self-pub because I want to hold a book in my hand. And I'm really, really freaking sick of hearing no from literary agents. And I was still querying another book at this point too. And so I wrote the book. I finished the book, did some revisions. I sent it to my critique partner and I said, okay, here's my plan. You read this, let me know what you think. My plan is I'd like to have this published by next spring. This was about exactly 2 years ago. It was November of 2023 that I finished writing Violet. So she read it and we got on the phone and she was like, hey, so I have no doubt that you would do really, really well as an indie author, and I think that you would find a lot of success. I also think you might really regret it if you don't at least send this one out to a couple of agents. And I sat with that and I chewed on it for a little bit and I thought, okay, you know what? I have nothing to lose. This was January 2024. I yeeted it out into the void and I was pretty detached from it, which is very different from my other books that I'd worked on. I would receive a no and I'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever. This is fine. I'm going to self-publish it anyway. This is just to see, just to make sure. But the interesting thing was I wasn't hearing no in the same way. I had an amazing request rate. 50% of the queries that I sent out, the agents wanted to read the whole manuscript. It was insane. I had not experienced this before. And then I got an offer and then I got more offers, which was wild. It happened so fast. I started querying at the end of January and this was, I think, April that I ended up signing with my agent. And from there, we did one round of revisions. We went out on sub and it sold within a couple of weeks. And it was an absolute whirlwind after years of silence and years of rejection and years of me doubting myself and being afraid to even jump into that pool because of my own self-rejection before I could let anybody else reject me. And so the fact that it built so slowly, and then suddenly that snowball just catapulted right down that hill so fast was wild. I am honestly still reeling when I think about it, but it's been an incredible experience since then. I love the editor that I work with. My imprint is fantastic. I'm just so excited. This is literally a lifetime dream come true to be able to hold this thing in my hands and to have it out on bookshelves and to have other people reading it. It's insane. it breaks my brain.
It has been such a whirlwind journey. And I have to say, as you know, seeing it just from my side, just want to give you a big congratulations and show all my support because it's been really wonderful. And I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been wild.
So my next question actually comes from a topic you've covered on your TikTok. And that is, what are some things that you had known about traditional publishing before you got your book deal? And what are some things that people just should know about trad publishing?
I think the biggest thing is the amount of waiting, especially now with like the rise of indie publishing and indie books being where they are. We have, authors who are putting out like 4 or 5 books a year, which like props to them. Oh my God, they are machines. I love this for everyone. That rate of creation is something that doesn't quite exist in the same way in traditional publishing. And that's starting to change a little bit. They're being a lot more open to authors doing more than 1 book a year. But there is so much waiting in traditional publishing. And as writers, we're people who wrote this book, who motivated ourselves to create this draft and to edit it and to get it out there and to get an agent and to get it out into the world. Suddenly having to take this thing that you've had total control over and put it into the hands of a team who now has total control over it and your schedule is really difficult. That's absolutely a huge adjustment that I don't think I was prepared for at the level that I've had to experience it. So yeah, the waiting, I feel like is one of the biggest things. Other things that I wish I'd known about traditional publishing, very much along those lines, like I said, like that lack of control, like being on somebody else's schedule, being in terms of, if you have a great idea for a book and somebody's like, nope, we don't want that. That's something you have to think about. If they don't like your title, that's something you have to think about. Or, you don't always get control over your cover. These are things that I think traditionally published authors don't quite think about in the same way as indie authors. And that aspect of control, that aspect of autonomy is something that I think that writers should consider very closely before they, decide which route to take. And fortunately, again, I'm in a position where I have had quite a bit of creative input in things like my cover and in things like, the title has been the same since I was querying the book. We changed Violet's last name. We took 2 letters away because it was too long. But like ultimately, like I'm in a good position there, but I've seen from a lot of my friends the ways that changes, the way that you don't always have control over how your book turns out. So another thing I feel like is super important when it comes to traditional publishing is the fact that it doesn't just suddenly get easier. You don't just get a book deal and be like, wow, I'm really good at this. And like, wow, my life is easy now. And wow, all of my imposter syndrome is gone, because it's not. It's something that sticks with you, and you continue to find new challenges, and you continue to find new insecurities along the way, and new struggles and new problems. And that's not to say that, I'm not grateful for this experience or that I'm not enjoying this experience. But I think that when you are in the query trenches and when you are writing a book and you're looking at authors who in your eyes are doing it, they are doing the thing, they are making it happen, you think, wow, must be nice. They have none of the same problems that I have. And maybe that's true, but the other truth is that they probably just have different ones. So being prepared for the fact that your problems won't magically disappear and you will still have imposter syndrome every day is something that I wish I had been a little bit more prepared for. I meet so many amazing authors, many of whom I admire, whose books I have loved and read and enjoyed, and learning that they are also experiencing this, learning that they also feel this way has been really eye-opening. Because to me, I'm at the point where if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would be like, wow, to be where I am now, like all my problems must be gone. But then to look at the people who are years ahead of me in the process and realize that they're still having them is wild. So doing work on yourself and in your own sense of confidence and in your own sense of self-worth is something that I very much recommend. My therapist and I have had a very busy year working with a lot of, letting go of outcomes and other people's opinions and things that are really, really hard and are an ongoing process. But that's something that I think even in indie publishing is super important, knowing your self-worth and knowing the reasons that you're doing this. Because even if you're If you're publishing a book, if you're doing it for other people to pat you on the back, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons anyway. That's another thing I wish I'd been prepared for going into traditional publishing. And then I think the other thing too is knowing that everyone's timeline looks really different. Every publishing process looks different between indie and traditional, absolutely, but just within traditional publishing, things look so different from my experience to another debut author's experience to an author who's on their second or third book's experience. The timelines look different. The amount of support that you receive from your publisher looks different. Just the process in general looks different. Some people might have more time in editing. Some people might be kind of getting rushed to the finish line. Some people might be a drop-in title. And so they're kind of, like going through this process at a breakneck speed, while some people might have been, they announced their book deal 2 years ago and the book's still not out for one reason or another. There is so much going on behind the scenes of publishing at any given time. And I think that's something else I wasn't super aware of, that there are so many moving parts and everything looks different and one size does not fit all, even once you have that book deal. So being aware of that, I think for me has helped me give a little bit of grace to myself, a little bit of grace to my team, a little bit of grace to other authors in my circle who are, experiencing harder times or easier times. It's helped just kind of set things in perspective, and having perspective is always something that's super important for me. I always want to be able to see the bigger picture of something. And the truth is, the big picture of publishing is huge. That things like a giant Guinness World Record breaking sized mural, you often can't have your eyes on the whole thing, but knowing that there is more going on than what you're seeing has been extremely helpful for me.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for sharing all of that with our listeners today and for joining me on the podcast to celebrate the release once again. Violet Thistlewaight is not a villain anymore, out
Woo-hoo!
Everywhere. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Crystal. I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
Thank you everyone for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.